Many of you have watched your City Council representatives here in the Littleton City Council chamber conducting business on Tuesday nights. But what is it that compels the average citizen to run for election? Is it the financial security of the $900 monthly salary? Or the long hours spent grappling with a difficult land use decision? Maybe it's knowing that you cast a vote that ensures racing pigeons will always be welcome in Littleton. On this edition of the Littleton Show, we'll introduce you to the personal side of your City Council representatives. After all, despite the prestige that comes with serving on council, they're just like the rest of us. Stay tuned and we'll introduce you to one council member who desires to appear on Dancing with the Stars. Another's death-defying encounter with an angry moose. And a Christmas collection that would make even Santa proud.
I'm Debbie Brinkman, and I represent District 4. I'm also serving as the Mayor Pro Tem.
My name is Phil Cernanek, and I represent District 3.
My name is Doug Clark. I'm a council member elected at large. I'm currently serving as president of the council, or we sometimes call that the mayor.
I'm Peggy Cole. I'm one of 3 city council members at large.
Hi, my name is Bruce Stallman, and I'm Littleton City Council member at large.
My name is Jim Taylor. I represent District 1 on the Littleton City Council, which I'll tell a little bit more about it later.
My name is Joseph Jose Trujillo, and I represent District 2, which is the northeastern district in the city of Littleton.
Absolutely one of my most favorite spots, not only in District 4, but in the world, is South Platte Park. And I just so much appreciate what has been done to preserve this area.
My wife and I enjoy taking some hikes on the Highline Canal, and certainly that's kind of fun getting out in the weather. And sometimes I even get out on the trail before there's light and get out with the skunks and the fox and the coyotes.
My favorite places in Littleton, well, it has to be Main Street during the Christmas holidays when the lights are on and it's so beautiful. Ryder Vista Park has a great view out to the mountains. Jackass Hill Park, obviously. We got great restaurants in Littleton, so there's lots of places to like.
One of my favorite places in Littleton is Stern Park. My husband and I have lived in that neighborhood since 1977. I love the variety of things that are here, the vegetation. I like the people in the area. I like the animals in the area. There's just a huge variety.
Some of my favorite spots in Littleton include the Littleton Heights area. A lot of that stems from my involvement and participation on the Historic Preservation Board before I got on City Council. The other one is Arapahoe Hills. That area is in the process of becoming an historic district, but it's a lot of homes that were designed, and the architecture was from a group of people who were working with Frank Lloyd Wright back in the 50s and 60s.
My District 1 Council includes the County Administration Building, the City Hall, the downtown Main Street. It includes ACC, the Denver Seminary, Hudson Gardens, and it includes the graveyard, so when the polls open up at 8 o'clock on Election Day, I've got several hundred votes to begin with.
Well, of course, we have Jose's, and we've been here for 44 years, going into our 45th year. And Jose's has always been a family-oriented. A lot of people called it the club. It's been very, very wonderful to us. We also have the chocolate therapy, which was Mary Carroll's down the street. Town Hall Arts Center, which is a great place.
Truly, we really have a very, very strong relationship based on respect, and we are good friends. I have been most surprised by that, most surprised by how wonderful it is to work with 6 other people who I may not always agree with, and who I oftentimes do agree with, but to be able to have a really, really good working relationship where you don't let personalities, you don't let personal things get in the way, and you really just do work towards serving the greater good, serving your community.
I think probably the most common question that I've received is, you mean it's not a full-time responsibility and you don't have a direct staff member to help you take care of that? You know, Aurora and Denver are a little bit different as far as size and complexity, and certainly city council members in Denver, they each have 2 assistants in what they do. No, we don't. It's between us and the city staff, and I have to say that the staff's been absolutely great.
Well, perhaps the biggest misconception I run against is what actually the mayor does and whether there's an office of the mayor, things like this. My position is actually president of the council. I'm elected by the other council members. After each election, there's an election every 2 years, and my job is actually to run the meetings on behalf of the council and to sign documents on behalf of the city. There's only one city in all of Colorado where the mayor is the chief executive of the city and actually in charge of the employees, and that's Denver. All the other cities in Colorado have a council manager type of government, and the city manager is actually the chief executive. The council sets policy.
I think the biggest misconception is that it doesn't take much time to do the job well. I think most of us spend frequently at least 20 hours a week devoted to council activities. But in my case, since I have a small house, it's also a big challenge to find places to put all the documents that I keep on hand to prepare for council business.
You really internalize the job more as working for the citizens, having gone through the election and actually been elected to do the job. The other piece of that has always been, you know, before I got involved, I kind of assumed it was a bit of a time suck, and I get far more energy from doing it and being involved and doing stuff that's new and participatory and connecting with people than I ever could have imagined.
Probably the biggest misconception citizens have is that they think we're full-time, and when really we're part-time. They think we got an office at City Hall, which we don't. They think we've got a staff. They think we draw down this huge salary, and really our salary is pretty crummy for the amount of time that we put in.
They'd like to get things done as quickly as possible, and they don't realize that we have to go through the whole procedure with all of our departments and make sure that everything is done correctly.
I've learned a great deal. I've learned a lot about how these formal meetings are run and the rules and the decorum. I've learned a lot about how the city works. I've learned an awful lot about the different departments in the city, the police, the fire, public works. It's been a great education. It's been an education that I've felt has definitely moved me forward in being a better council person.
As far as council responsibilities itself is the number of liaison responsibilities that are there. It's kind of like waking up on Christmas morning and finding a number of presents underneath the tree with regard to those liaison responsibilities. And any one of those little toys could certainly absorb all of your time, and how to balance those and provide the right level of energy, as well as making sure that all of those balls are up in the air and taken care of.
Everybody starts off from ground zero when they're first elected to council, and so learning how the council operates, the council staff relationships, how to get things done, what our relationship is with other cities, how the city meshes into the regional area, how to get things done with the legislature, all of those things that are basically learned on the job.
Everything literally from A to Z, from auditing the city budget to zoning and everything in between.
The visible stuff is the roads getting plowed and the police and the fire. What isn't seen, but which also does add value, is some of the stuff behind the scenes that you couldn't experience the quality services at the community level if you didn't have people changing oil in fire trucks.
Well, let me tell you, I've been elected official since 1968 in one capacity or another. The thing I notice most of anything is how much more preparation it takes now to do things. You spend a lot more time doing the job than you used to, and that has changed over the years.
I have learned that transparency is one of the most important things that people want out of council. We've adhered to the sunshine laws, which say you have to be open governments. We have television on our council meetings and some of our other departments. So this makes the public much more aware of what we're doing.
For me, it's oftentimes a conversation I have between my head and my heart. And there's two sides, sometimes there's three sides. And I really, really want to be fair, and I really want to make the right decisions. I don't think it's a place to sit up there and make mistakes. And the challenge really is to weigh all of these things and find that balance, find that place where the decision in the long term is going to serve the community the best.
Sometimes folks say you can't get anything done yourself or understand that. Yes, we can influence as individual members, but as those folks that may have watched any of our city council meetings, you might have the city manager come back and respond to any of us and say, where are the other 3 votes? Because across the council of 7 members, we need to get 3 other folks to agree before we can actually even set policy.
The biggest challenge is perhaps working in a group environment. We have 7 people on council. It takes 4 votes to get anything done. You don't get to do what it is that you want to do or what you think is the best thing to get done. What you get to do is what gets 3 other votes.
The biggest challenge is trying to ensure the financial health of the city while also protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens. But it's also a challenge to try to make sure that we have our hand on the pulse of the citizens and to ensure transparency in everything that council does.
The challenges are always to try to form consensus and to, as much as you can, be out in the community and be accessible. I really view the job as being a sounding board for the citizens, trying to be available and accessible to the citizens. It's not about the 7 of us sitting on council. It's about giving people the opportunity to connect with somebody who's in one of those positions so that they feel they've got a say in what goes on.
I find several challenges being on city council. Number one, I think remaining neutral, keeping your emotions in check, trying to figure out what the bigger picture is, how you can cooperate with other areas in the region. Those are big challenges. Where we're going to be in 20 years, I have no idea where that's going to be, but that's a big challenge. We need to plan for that now, and I'd like to be around in 20 years to see what it's going to look like. So that's where I think our challenges are.
One of the biggest challenges I think we have on being on city council is the fact you have to learn to work together as a group. There's 7 elected officials. You don't always have complete agreement on everything. And another thing is the fact that when you're elected, some people think that by coming to their city council person, they can get all their problems solved. But we have the same problems that anybody else does. We have to take this to city council if it be a traffic parking problem in a district or whatever it might be.
One of my new, most favorite things to do in Littleton is to tube down the river. As much as I enjoy the biking and the walking, I just recently started throwing tubes in there and going down with some friends, and it is just a blast.
When I'm kind of in an aggressive mood or something of that sort, I play a little bit of ice hockey. I have a chance to get out and have some fun in the position that maybe I prefer is to play that goalie position.
I like to read. I go out jogging almost every day on the Highline Canal, which is great amenity, the trails, Lee Gulch of the city.
I love volunteering and helping at any of the special events that make Littleton so special, but particularly I love volunteering at Bemis Library.
We're relatively big on sports as a family. In particular, I think our #1 favorite hobby is probably Rockies games, going to Rockies games and watching Rockies games on television and throwing each other out of the game the way umpires throw Jim Tracy out of Rockies games. You are out of here.
My hobbies are collecting, and behind me is a collection of feather trees, and they are all filled with tree-shaped ornaments. Before I moved here, though, I had a much larger collection. That collection had over 300 trees, and I had to get rid of them whenever I moved, so I gave them away to charities or sold some of them. But the largest tree I had there, one that really pained me to part with, was a 15-foot tree that had over 5,000 miniature lights. It had over 3,800 glass ornaments. It was plugged into 3 circuits in the house, and every time I turned the microwave on, I'd blow a circuit. So I had to be very careful about microwave use while that was on.
I love kites. I have kites that probably the biggest one is 14 feet across the head that will lift you out, literally lift you off the ground if you're not careful. So you have to have 2 guys with you because that's got a 200-pound test line on it. And if you get it out there too far, and you got to wear gloves with it, but leather gloves because of the fact that it'll cut your hands off.
I have a tattoo. I had the big 5-0 over the summer, and I am my zodiac sign is Cancer, and my sister's also a Cancer, so she said, let's go get matching tattoos. So we got the symbol of the Cancer crab, and then just had to put on our ankles, and now we're crab legs.
I was born in Cleveland, Ohio. That by itself is not an issue, but you know, it was back in the time when there was actually milk that was delivered to homes, and I'm actually the milkman's son. My dad worked for an organization called Producers Milk, and that was in Cleveland, Ohio, so sometimes when I'm looking to add a smile to someone's face, I can tell them I'm a milkman's son.
What people may not know is that I was a part of a group of citizens that was involved in the rezone of the development here and the creation of Jackass Hill Park. It started out as a proposal to build a bunch of houses on the hill. This is about 40 acres. What finally resulted was a referendum and then a compromise with the developer, and what you have is about a 17-acre park that preserves the views to the mountains. Some people say that the hill was named because people used to raise jackasses on it, but Lyman Ditson, who used to live in a little white house across the street until he passed away a few years ago, said that the hill was named after him. And in fact, most of the people in my subdivision vie for the honor of having the hill named after them. So we all contest on who the hill's actually named after.
I run about 5 to 7 miles a day. I try to run 7 days a week. Well, I like running outdoors as opposed to indoors. And I like running outdoors, particularly in Sturm Park, because I'm running in a beautiful open area, and the fresh air is really invigorating, and it clears my mind. Often I solve problems I wouldn't even realize and had in the back of my mind.
I think we'd gone down to one of the peninsulas towards Seward, and ended up stopped at a stoplight, and just looking around, all of a sudden we see a couple of moose walking towards the car, and Kel and Jay, thought it was a petting zoo, which was really sort of not a good idea. The moose are pretty aggressive and pretty ill-mannered and distempered as well. So long story short, I think if I hadn't moved the car, they'd have probably just walked right across the car, because once they get going in a direction, they tend not to stop.
I got ready to apply for a passport to go overseas, and took my paperwork down to the passport office, and they looked at it and said, "Oh, this is a registration of your birth. It's not a birth certificate. We got to have a birth certificate." So I said, "Okay, no problem." I came back home. I called the Texas Bureau of Vital Statistics, and the young lady couldn't find me anywhere. Finally, she said, "Well, tell me what hospital you were born in." I said, "I was born in a ranch house." She said, "Oh, you weren't in a hospital?" I said, "No." She said, "Well, you're in the Department of Agriculture. You're with the registered cows."
I'd like to be on Dancing on the Stars just for one time to dance in front of people. I love to dance, and probably it's my first love. So then I have my wife. But she understands, because that's pretty much what we did when we got together.
Go! You out of here.
So it's been a real boon for our whole family that Bruce has been on City Council, because it's gotten us all more involved in the community events.
I was on Candid Camera back in the 90s.
This dough that I'm making is the same dough that you would use to make tortillas. Take them, cut them in 4 pieces. It's almost like a Indian fry bread.
You want to come show how I tackled you the other day, and he'll get it on video.
Should we reenact?
Probably
It's historical.
not. We'll get in trouble.
Now I've got over 1,000 ornaments on here. It takes me all day long to set this up.
None of us had really played hockey before, and so when you see the video, it is absolutely hilarious, because you see a little black dot going across the screen, and then you see this group of guys that are kind of groping each other, kind of meandering down the ice.
That you'd like to add that we didn't cover?
Not that I want on tape.